everybody, and thank you, Harry, for the presentation. We will be speaking in the next 20 minutes about Y chromosomes among Jewish population, and I chose to take the route of one particular Y chromosome lineage and to go with you through the story of the genomic tale of the Levite patronyme. So, we are going to focus particularly on Ashkenazi Levites in this presentation. So who was Levi? Levi was the third son of Jacob, so this is why it's a patronyme, because Levi was a first name. Classic patronymes are like a son of Stephen, that are turning eventually to be Stevenson as a surname. So Levi was a private name according to the biblical stories, but now there are quite a lot of people worldwide that are affiliating as Levites. They have many different surnames of Levite, but they also have some particular role in the Jewish tradition, being part of the priestly lineage called Levite as well today. So this is Levi, and one particular branch of the son of Levi, of the great-great-great-father Levi, is Aaron, who established another priestly lineage, which is the Cohen lineage, which already mentioned yesterday that Professor Skoreski was working about it already 20 years ago. And all the rest that are not Cohen are actually Levites contemporary, and there are roughly 500 to 600,000 people worldwide that will be self-affiliating as Levites, roughly 4% of the Jewish population. Why are we interested so much in the surname Levite? That is something which should be explained very briefly to those of you who are not familiar with the concept. So we are familiar with the fact that females carry 2 X chromosomes, while males are carrying 1 X and 1 Y. That means that the Y chromosome can only be inherited from the father and being passed to the son. That is very similar to what is going on with surnames in many Western cultures, certainly with the Levite and Cohen lineages that are passing the surname and the specific role to their sons. So, if we are going to have this in mind, then we can take a very easy test and go to look in different places of the world and just look what type of Y chromosomes are available there, what kind of book editions. And this is a very nice picture that is showing that in different places of the world there are different colors, different Y chromosome types. But if one is looking a little bit closer to this picture, one can see that in the Middle East, very much like in the news, there are a lot of colors, there's a lot of mess, a lot of balagan. But then, if we are going towards the America, we can see that suddenly there is only one predominant color, and we see it is disappearing as we go south. We can also try to look where is this color coming from. Is it in Africa? Is it here? And we can see it actually here in Thuringia. So that is starting to tell us that these Y chromosomes are not just random. They might be suggesting that there is some migration path that they are marking for human populations. Maybe they are ancestral and descendants from each other. And that actually brings up the concept that we can use the Y chromosome, who is only passing from father to son. It has no recombination, almost no recombination, and we can draw from this solid phylogenies that will actually describe how males spread worldwide. The good news first is that all males in this room and worldwide do have one common ancestor. It is only a matter of how back we look in the past and how many people you want for Rosh Hashanah, of course, etc. But basically, we are all descendants of one expanding family lineage. Now, since we don't have the time in this presentation to go into the details of this, I will be reading with you. I will be taking these 2 minutes to read a little bit about evolution, and then I hope that all of you will be convinced that indeed evolution is progressing in very few minor steps, but that altogether are being very significant. So, the European Commission has just announced an agreement whereby English will be the official language of the European Union rather than German, which was the other possibility. As part of the negotiations, the British government considered that English spelling had some room for improvement and has accepted a 5-year phasing plan that would become known as Euro-English. In the first year, S will replace the soft C. Certainly, this will make the civil servant jump with joy. The hard C will be dropped in favor of K. This should clear up confusion, and keyboards can have one less letter. There will be growing public enthusiasm in the second year when the troublesome PH will be replaced with F. This will make words like photograph there 20% shorter. In the third year, public acceptance of the new spelling can be expected to reach the stage where more complicated changes are possible. Governments will encourage the removal of double letters, which have always been a deterrent to upward spelling. Also, all will agree that the horrible mess of the silent C in the language is disgraceful and should go away. By the fourth year, people will be respected to steps such as replacing TH with Z and W with V. During the first year, the only scenarios will be dropped from words containing U, and after this fifth year, we will have a real sensible written state. There will be no more trouble or difficulty, and everyone will find it easy to understand it properly. The dream of a united Europe will finally come true, and after the first year, we will all be speaking German like the good lady in the church. So I hope that no more arguments about the biology. Naturally, this is not a true example. It would have been true only if German would have been a language that is extant today. But for the example, it's pretty. So, we're going to start with what we first learned about Ashkenazi Levites. What we did is back in 2003, we had a very little knowledge of the haplogroups content of the human phylogeny, of the male phylogeny, and we have these haplogroups here. Each of these names is actually the name of a book, nothing more than this, name of a Y-chromosome book. And then we took Ashkenazi Cohen, Faradi Cohen, Ashkenazi Levite, Faradi Levite, Ashkenazi Israelite, Faradi Israelite, and then non-Jews, Germans, Norwegians, Swords, and Belarusians. And we started to look simply for the frequencies of the different haplogroups in this population. And we are marking here a haplogroup that is called R1A1, and we can see that among Ashkenazi Levites, it was over 50% of the variation. That was very strange, because it's Ashkenazi Cohen that was only 1%, and Faradi Cohen 5%, but we could see that it is quite prevalent in Swords and Belarusians, and we knew it is quite prevalent actually in East European populations. So we said, okay, there is something interesting here. We draw a small phylogenetic tree, a major joining network, and we identified that there was a strong founding event within the last 2,000 years, and that 50% of contemporary Ashkenazi Levites are actually carrying one unique signal. We suggested there that there might be close relatedness to non-Jewish groups, because we saw that the R1A haplogroup is very frequent in East Europe. But we still said that the origin might not be completely resolved, because we couldn't have a very good understanding of R1A haplogroup, and we knew that while it is 60% in East Europe, it is 8% in the Middle East. So we said there might be a slight chance that despite being an R1A in Ashkenazi Jews, which are in East Europe, it might have still maybe been from the Middle East. That was still not clear there. The problem was that it was really hard to find within R1A new branches that would split R1A in a sensible way which has some geographic meaning. In 2010, still using more than 2,000 samples, the work led by Peter Underhill still found no good structure, and we were still completely stuck with the origin of Ashkenazi Levites. But then in 2015, a paper by Dr. Karmin, Monika from the Estonian Biocentre was summarizing a few hundreds of whole Y-chromosomes. So that means that it's the first time that we started to look not into small positions in the Y-chromosome, but into the entire molecule. When I'm saying entire molecule, I'm speaking about 10 million base pairs, not really the entire molecule, but large chunks of the sequences. And suddenly, a lot of phenomena that we couldn't explain before started to become clearer. More particularly, as part of this study, we could look better into haplogroup R1A again. And during the work on this haplogroup, which was only published in 2015, we already knew a few years before that there is an existence of a marker called M5A2. Nobody needs to remember it. But this marker, we screened population through it, and one day I received a phone call from Siiri, working in an Estonian Biocentre, saying, listen, Doron, I have this group of 13 people coming from your collection, very strange, but they all seem to be M5A2. What are they? So I looked and I saw that they are Ashkenazi Levites, and we started to work on this. So we drew a phylogeny, and we saw that in fact in this phylogeny, we saw that Ashkenazi Levites are creating some kind of a cluster here. We had only 2 Ashkenazi Levite samples then. They are close to one Iberian sample, to a Syrian. They are close to other, let's say, East Eurasian population. We really didn't know much, but we started to look for this systematically. And we saw that actually all Levites that were classified before as R1A1, this famous haplogroup, actually can be reassigned into the more delineated or defined haplogroup RN5A2. We looked at frequencies in other Jewish populations. So first of all, in Israelites it was very minor, in Cohen it's minor. But then in non-Ashkenazi, we again identified it in Levites, but it was in 8 out of 9 Levites. So the total frequency was much lower than Ashkenazi Jews, but then the very same lineage that is hallmarked with Ashkenazi Levites was also found among non-Ashkenazi Levites. So we said, okay, there is something interesting here. It seems to us, first of all, that these Ashkenazi Levites are not clustering with European sub-haplogroups anymore, but we didn't know for sure. And also, we didn't know if this structure is representing the Ashkenazi Levites, or maybe it is just by chance 2 remote cousins that were not known that they are cousins that resemble. So, to shed light on this, we first started by exploring the huge number of samples worldwide, leading to the 2013 paper. We started with around 1,500 Jews, and we saw that indeed within the Jews we have high frequencies of this haplogroup, which is primarily being explained by Ashkenazi Levites. And we checked 15,000 non-Jews coming from Western Europe, from Eastern Europe, from the Near East, from the Caucasus, and we showed that actually in East Europe, which was the neighboring location of Ashkenazi Jews, none of the R1A that we checked, and we checked over 2,000 samples of R1A, none of them belonged to the Levite clade. We went on by checking in the Near East, and we found that actually in very minor frequencies, but existing in the Near East is this haplogroup. We found one sample which was Caucasus, which was from a Nogai population. So we said, okay, that seems to be quite a proof that Ashkenazi Levites carry an R1A lineage which gives us a Levitian ancestry. But there were open questions. So, how did they move to Europe? Is it through the Ashkenazi founding lineages? Is it through the Sephardic movement into Europe, into Spain? Is it something that was already expanding in the Levant and spread to both directions? If it is via the Ashkenazi route, are we speaking about expansion in East Europe and then in progression into the Sephardic Jews? If it is via the Sephardic route, are we speaking about minor frequencies in Sephardic Jews, migration into East Europe to the Ashkenazi community, and then expansion there? So what can we do to shed light on these questions? So we took 65 Ashkenazi R1A M5A2 Levites, which were very well defined as being Ashkenazi Levites by 2 expert genealogists, Meir Gover, who is sitting in the audience, and Jeff Wexler, who is not with us. And they are representing 56 different surnames. So we were sure that they are Levites because we knew that the grave is saying that their great-great-grandparents, etc., is noting Levite, or Halevi, or whatever. Then we took 435 samples to a total of 500 samples that we chose them by first inspecting the huge database of family tree DNA, over 40,000 samples of R1A. Then we chose samples from different haplogroups that are representing Ashkenazi characteristic, and we took everything which we could take from the database, for example, for the paper of Karmin, which I think is in the audience as well. So we used two genotyping platforms. One was the complete genomics, one was the Illumina, and we chose 5 samples to run on both of them to see that we indeed can combine the data. The overlapping region between them was 6 million milliseconds. So now we draw the phylogeny of RNA. And these are all Ashkenazi Levites. They're all making a very tight cluster, and now there are no more questions. Where is the root? Where is it bifurcating? If there is another hidden bifurcation, there is no more question. The only samples that share this lineage of Ashkenazi Levites are non-Ashkenazi Levites, and are Ashkenazi samples from the study of Shai, which for them there was no notification if they are Levites or non-Levites. So immediate question will be, okay, what is the coalescence? So the signal of expansion here is roughly 1,500 years ago. So we do know now, we can say that all males that are belonging to R1A, M5A2, now it is not M5A2, it is a more delineated one, let's call it Y2619 and never say it again in this presentation. They are all descending of one male who spread across the Ashkenazi population. The origin is something that one will immediately want to ask. So we are going to look to this part of the tree because we want to look as close to the Ashkenazi in the paraphyletic plate and see where are they. So we can see that we have Iranian Karmin, Iranian Azeri, we have the Iberian, we have the Yazidi individual here, again Iranian, Palestinian, then we are going to Tartu population. So that is making it quite clear that we are discussing about the lineage thriving and expanding from a repertoire that is available in the Middle East. So let's go back to the coalescence. How accurate are we with the 1,500 years? And for this, it is always good to have an internal calibration point. So one day, Meir is telling me, listen, I know the Horowitz family. It's a very well-known rabbinical Levite family. And we know that they have a migration path from Girona in Spain, into Czech in a given set of years. And then Meir is showing a huge phylogeny. I think it's 20 pages long. And he tells me, listen, there are 5 individuals that I know that they are on this tree, and they all claim that they are coming from the original founder of the lineage of this rabbinical Levite. Also, not the one that it is respected to him, few generations back already know, which is Yeshayahu Horowitz Ish Horowitz. So I said, okay, let's see, prove it to me. So that was the documented genealogy, the recorded genealogy that was supplied, and that was the molecular one. So first of all, we saw that all 5 individuals are sitting in this cluster, and for 3 of them we had this documented phylogeny, so we said, let's look at it. So this individual is this individual molecularly, this individual is this individual molecularly, and this individual is this individual molecularly. So we cannot refute the claim of the genealogies that they are indeed coalescing in individuals they claim to coalescing. These are the 2 others that only said we are belonging to the tree. We don't know where we are coalescing into. The record, the date of birth of this individual is 401 years before present, and the molecular is 399. Actually, the individual here, Ish Horowitz, is 5-6 years before present, and the point, the root of all the lineages that said that they are Horowitz is 5 or 6 years before present. So we think that we are pretty accurate with our molecular dating, and that is saying actually that we know that the root is 1,450 years before present. They could give a few hundred years, of course, as in genetics. And we do know that in 550 years before present, there was a Levite probably walking in Europe with this lineage. So we don't know yet what's going on in the remaining 900 years, but we are getting really closer and closer on the date. We can also see here that the expansion of the Horowitz is not something unique. It's happened all over the Levite lineages during roughly the same time. So now we need to ask, what can the non-Ashkenazi Levites tell us about? So had the non-Ashkenazi Levites came separately from the Levant and expanded in Spain, and another set of Ashkenazi Levites went from the Levant to Europe, and they evolved differently, then we are expecting that the Ashkenazi non-Levites to be in one cluster, and the Ashkenazi Levites to be in a different cluster. So we looked at it, and we saw that the non-Ashkenazi Levites are simply falling in random places on the tree, and they are not forming any cluster. So that is preferring a scenario in which the lineage expanded in Ashkenaz, among Ashkenazi Jews, and introgressed into non-Ashkenazi Levites. In order to give us more insight into this, we want to say, why did the Ashkenazi Levites R1A lineage expand so dramatically? Did they have any socioeconomic status that preferred them to expand? Anything unique in them, or was it just an expansion of Ashkenazi Jews in general? So we can look at other haplogroups. And for example, haplogroup Q is 5.2%, and we can see that the coalescence is 1,600 years before present, quite resembling of the Ashkenazi Levite one. We can also see here something interesting. This haplogroup Q is nobody knows how it made it into Ashkenazi Jews. It's the most prevalent among Native Americans. So it is really split from the rest of the tree in tens of thousands of years, but we can see one Moroccan Jew, which is here, but is not part of the Ashkenazi clade, differently from the R1A. We can look to haplogroup G, and we can see again that the coalescence is roughly 1,250 years before present, and that there's another Yemenite Jews which is again not making it here. There are more non-Ashkenazi Jews. I just can't show you all the data in these figures. If we're going to look to haplogroup E, which is a huge haplogroup, so it has many sub-branches, the same repeat, 1,250, 1,500, 1,400, 1,300. So we are trying to say here that there is nothing really specific to the expansion of the Ashkenazi Levites. It seemed like that was one of the lineages that was probably within the very first ancestors that have founded the population. I think it was estimated to be 350 individuals recently, again by Shai. So it seems as if the Ashkenazi Levite was only one of the lineages expanding in Ashkenazi Jews. Now, naturally, we have to ask ourselves what is the relationship between Levite and Cohen. So the Cohen model haplotype is well known to be nested within haplogroup J1P58. Again, nobody has to remember P58. But we can see here something different. We can see that the coalescence here is 2,500 years, which is much closer to the original numbers that presented by Carl in the two papers, and then the third paper in 2009, I believe it was. So it feels like that the Cohen Ashkenazi, there are also here Moroccan and Yemenite, and non-Ashkenazi Jews are coalescing in a time period which is pre-diaspora, not within the diaspora, already differently from Ashkenazi Levites. We can see that there are other J1 lineages among Ashkenazi Jews, so it's not that all J1 are Cohen lineage, it is a very specific one. And if we want to look to, for example, a sister group, J2, we see again that the coalescence of Ashkenazi Jews is 1,400 years before present. So in summary, we think that we can say that the founder of the Ashkenazi Levite pedigree is of Levantine origin. It contains a one star-like signal of expansion, roughly 1,500 years ago. We think that its arrival to Europe was with the Ashkenazi Jewish ancestor. We think that he was one of the very few original ancestors. We think that he was likely not prevalent among the Hebrews because we can't see branches of it among the non-Ashkenazi population or Levites. We think that there was a repeated introgression into non-Ashkenazi Levites, and we can say very carefully, we can suggest very carefully that it might be related to the Levite status because we saw that the non-Ashkenazi Levites, R1A, are part of the Ashkenazi milieu, but if we look at G haplogroup, at Q haplogroup, and other haplogroups, they are forming a separate branch. And there is one question that we still don't know to say. We don't know if the ancestor self-affiliated as a Levite already in the Levant, or he took upon himself this role in during the establishment of the community. Naturally, the biblical story between that Levi is part of that Aaron is part of the Levites is not being transmitted to the genetics because R1A and J158 are coalescing much before they were Hebrews or anything else. Thank you very much. That was a great acknowledgements are too many. Many people have helped around throughout the years to do this trail, and I will not mention all of them. I would like to mention particularly friends in Tartu, Biocentre, which has been my second home for many years, our genealogical years in Meir G and team in DNA, which was very helpful in supplying samples and information about samples. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Doron, for a really excellent talk. Again, we'll take one or two questions. Doron, you showed us evidence for Sephardic Jews and North African Jews, and of course we tend to think that there are three major branches of the Jewish diaspora among Ashkenazi, among European Jews, Middle Eastern Jews, and North African Jews, and so the Sephardic Jews and the Ashkenazi Jews would be representative of the European diaspora, and the evidence really tends to support that. With regard to the examples that you provided, for instance, from Moroccan Jews, would you characterize that as repeated in progressive events?
We think that this did happen. So it's an excellent question. Naturally, we all initially say that Ashkenazi Jews are European Jews, and Sephardic Jews are being more affiliated with the Mizrahi Jews, so to say. But Sephardic Jews are European Jews. They prospered in Spain. And we do see repeated evidence both from the mitochondrial DNA, and from the whole genome scans, and from Y-chromosome. It seems like these populations did have gene flow between them, which is not very visible in the historical documents. So initially, when we saw it, we were trying to say that that might be a symbol of a common Levantine origin. But since we repeatedly see it among Spanish exiles, whether direct like in Turkey, Bulgaria, or in North Africa, and we left it in Iraqi and Iranian Jews, for example, then we do think that there was ongoing gene flow between these populations.